1999 was a huge year for Star Wars. Rumors about new Star Wars were always around. George Lucas would even occasionally talk about it, but finally, after 16 years of new Star Wars tucked away, hibernating from the big screen, it was back. And oh boy, was it controversial and contentious among the fandom. With the 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace being only a few days away, I thought it would be fun to hop inside of the time machine and explore what the critics and fans said about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And while we're on the topic of history, I love Spielberg, I love George Lucas. Now there's a new podcast drama series about their friendship leading into Jaws and Star Wars. The podcast is called Blockbuster. It's meticulously researched by Emmy Award-winning journalists. The voice acting is great, the music is incredible. I cannot express enough how well it's done and how much I've been enjoying it. So all you gotta do is search Blockbuster, all one word, wherever you listen to podcasts, or check it out at getblockbuster.com. The Phantom Menace, 1999, critic and fan reactions. David Edelstein from Slate. George Lucas does it his way in The Pallid Phantom Menace. Even cultists will wish he hired a director and some writers. The chief villain, bombastically named Darth Maul, is a horned red, kabuki-style snake demon with orange ping-pong ball eyes, who challenges the Jedi to a couple of clackety lightsaber battles. His appearances are underscored by demonic chants. He might as well wear a neon beanie that flashes bad guy. Like all revisionist historians, Lucas cheats like mad. If Vader had built C-3PO as a young man, how come he never paid much attention to him in the other movies and vice versa? As Yoda himself puts it in another context, see through you, we can. Roger Ebert. There is a sense of discovery in scene after scene of The Phantom Menace as he tries out new effects and ideas, and seamlessly integrates real characters and digital ones, real landscapes and imaginary places. We are standing at the threshold of a new age of epic cinema, I think, in which digital techniques mean that budgets will no longer limit the scope of scenes. Filmmakers will be able to show us just about anything they can imagine. With the help of the Wayback Machine and some archived pages, we can check out what some fans were saying in the moment, right around the time of release. TheForce.net was a hopping place for Star Wars fans to express themselves, with threads like, Lucas and his yes men ruined Star Wars, or Jar Jar Binks, the Jinx, or is it possible for me to be somewhere between a basher and a gusher? And a basher and a gusher were labels that people threw on one another. You know, silly shit. The discussions were so similar, I mean so similar, to how things are today. From the language to the discourse to the very arguments, you could literally run a find and replace command for the phrases Phantom Menace and The Last Jedi, and the riffs would be almost indistinguishable from one another. Here's a thread called A Challenge to Phantom Menace Apologists, in which user Gene begins by saying, "It seems the Phantom Menace detractors, labeled bashers no matter how smart, reasonable, or polite they are, often post intelligent criticism only to receive personal attacks and empty arguments from the few Phantom Menace fans who don't resort to simply restating that they like the movie. As much as that, and the flip side of that, is history repeating itself today, the replies are even more so. People tell Gene to stop using the term apologist because it defeats the point of his supposed desire for civility. Some people are using metaphors like a chocolate cake not tasting like a chocolate cake and being difficult to chew. Some people write entire novels. Who cares whether the horse-faced frogs beat the spindly robots? It was hard enough to care that the main character got killed. Some people said the people who didn't like it, well, they just don't get it. Your favorite color is red, my favorite color is blue. How is arguing and debating over that going to change either's point of view?" It is really interesting to dive into the fandom of that time. The parallels are so on point. It's just a little louder today, because everyone thinks they have their own personal Truman Show. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian. The strange, ominous pall that hangs over young Annie would be baffling to anyone who does not realize that we must rely, as it were, on extra textual clues. We have to know the hype, to have read the hype. The hype is an essential part of the package, and this is why Phantom Menace is ultimately so extraordinarily objectionable. It treats us like fans, not an audience. It takes our slavish consumer status for granted and does not feel the need to do any real work to engage us, to make us care about the story or the characters. It's all FX and merchandise. Nothing has the right to bore and disappoint us this much. And when it's finally over, and I found myself looking at my watch with my eyelids very heavy, we get an ending which is neither satisfactory closure nor cliffhanger, just the end of one episode in a massive self-satisfied TV series, a TV series which deserves to be canceled. Harry Knowles from Ain't It Cool News said, "My God, I'm trapped in this. I'm so utterly love-smitten. I was afraid tonight. Instead, I saw a really wonderful adventure, a fairy tale that told of a galaxy far, far away. I guess I'm still a kid, because when I came home this morning, I didn't update, I didn't even go online. I just played with my toys, holding them, and trying to figure out what their place in things were." Keith Phillips from the AV Club said, "It's as if Lucas decided to court younger audience members by patterning a character after a Ritalin-jonesing 5-year-old with a speech impediment, almost as distracting as Jake Lloyd's hollow performance as the boy who will be Darth Vader. Although, because he's really no worse than Mark Hamill, his stilted delivery and limited emotional range might actually be something of an homage. Fart jokes and a two-headed sportscaster help make the Phantom Menace a tad more terrestrial than it probably ought to be. A cartoony underwater adventure early on doesn't really work, two villains speak in accents straight out of Charlie Chan movie puzzles, and the lack of time spent developing Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson's characters speak to a certain amount of laziness." Janie Maslin from the New York Times said, "Mr. Lucas's first installment offers a happy surprise. It's up to snuff. It sustains the gee-whiz spirit of the series and offers a swashbuckling, extra-galactic getaway, creating illusions that are even more plausible than the kitchen-raiding raptors of Jurassic Park. While the human stars here are reduced to playing action figures, they are upstaged by amazing backdrops and hordes of crazily lifelike space beings as the Lewis Carroll in Mr. Lucas is given free rein." Owen Gleiberman from Entertainment Weekly said, "The primary struggle played out in Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace is that of George Lucas nervously fighting to give everyone in the galaxy their money's worth. It's not just the preponderance of digitally realized, yet still rubbery creatures, which have the disquieting effect of making everything around them seem cutesy and innocuous. It's that Lucas now directs like a man with a short-circuited attention span. Some of The Phantom Menace is fun, but it's also skittery and overstuffed, too intent on keeping the audience wired into a state of sense-crackling excitement. Watching the movie, you feel as if you're simultaneously playing a maniacally rapid-fire video game, wandering the aisles of a futuristic toy store, and, almost incidentally, sitting through a science fiction fable about a couple of Jedi Knights who befriend young Anakin Skywalker, the spunky, intuitive whiz kid who will eventually grow up to be Darth Vader." Some fans don't understand why anyone would give a shit about competitively comparing box office numbers of two films. Surish says, "I can't comprehend why there is a feud between The Phantom Menace and Titanic. There were even Jar Jar Binks hate websites with a really weird poll over there on the left side. There were websites that gave you 78 reasons to hate The Phantom Menace." Reading forums from 1999 is probably the most interesting. Fan reactions in the moment. Things like, "I liked the movie when I first saw it too. The stuff that bugged me snuck up on me after the initial thrill died down." Or the notion that the filmmaker himself puts fans down. Some of us don't realize the insulting attitude Lucas has taken with fans. He puts out a new Star Wars film that lacks the wit and quality of the Star Wars saga. He does this because there is a good chance that we, as Star Wars fans, may accept the film no matter what. Such was not the case. Many fans found some of the parts of the new Star Wars episode hard to swallow. Despite forums being full to the brim with criticism of The Phantom Menace, there was also a good amount of folks defending what they saw. Cry me a river, you poor babies. No matter how civil and quote-unquote apologist is on this forum, there's still going to be people who like and don't like the movie. As for you, who think every film in the series has to be as good as A New Hope or ESB, wake up to reality. That will never happen, no matter how hard George Lucas tries. They are magical, one-of-a-kind films, and not every film in the series will possess that to the same degree. There will be ones that are worse than the others, but that does not make them bad movies. Or, central to this view of humanity is the character of Jar Jar Binks. Most have eloquently picked up on the fact that he is the classic fool in the form of Shakespeare's comedies, one who, while seeming to be clumsy on the outside, is truly offering a commentary on the present and a moral truism. Obviously, Jar Jar does not do this as eloquently as if the Bard had written him, but Lucas's style is different. The similarity is that both authors use the comic character for satire, Where the fool was classically used to present this satire, Lucas uses him to represent the satire. And even posts addressing the constant headbutting in the fandom at the time. It really doesn't matter how much sense a poster makes about the good and obvious scenes in the film, you are just incapable of changing your point of view, as I am, no doubt. So why should I argue or debate the matter with you? It would be the equivalent of talking to a brick wall, and I do not talk to brick walls, Gene. Do you? Needless to say, if you were alive and tuned into the online discussion during the time of The Phantom Menace, you saw a lot of this. A lot. You couldn't go on forums or chat rooms and not feel the rift. It was contentious. I would argue that it might have been more contentious than now. It was just more focused. It was on forums for fans rather than social media for everyone. Responses became essays. Civility broke down. Moderators pulled their hair out. But eventually, it calmed down. These forum posts aren't monetized after all. No one was incentivized by monetization to make hundreds of videos saying the same exact thing like a damn pull-string doll. Star Wars lived on. The hype, enthusiasm, love, and hatred ebbed and flowed. All you can do is ride the wave and try not to wipe out while doing it. Hello, Greedo. Out.